Greetings friends, and in this video I will tell you about mystical objects from the botany fashion. Sit down comfortably, and we'll start. The first thing we will consider is that we will have weapons, tools and armor made of monosteel. The protective properties of armor on steel are the same as those of armor and iron. Reservation, pineapple, protection is the same, but the armor has additional properties. Its first property is that if you put on a full set of 4 elements, you will have a discount on the cost of mana for tools, 10%. Also, if your armor gets damaged, it can self-repair due to mana. Now I have picked up a mana source, in my case it is a mana tablet and the damage was instantly eliminated. And actually let's go through the recipes. This is how the terrace is made, this is how monosteel greaves are made, this is how shoes are made, respectively. As you already guessed, this is how a helmet is made. And now let's take a look at the tools and weapons. The characteristics of the tools' weapons are the same as those of the iron ones, and they also repair their damage due to the mana received. There are also other useful chips. If you have torches in your inventory, then the pickaxe will put the torch automatically when you right-click, which in some cases is very convenient. It's the same with an axe. If you have seedlings, then when you right-click them, we will install them. The book says that shovels and a hoe can set the ground, but I press the right mouse button and nothing happens to me. The trail is also made with an ordinary stone shovel. This is a built-in function of all shovels. Also, if you have mana in your inventory and, accordingly, you use monosteel scissors, you can probably get a little more wool by shearing sheep. Now we are unlucky, but now we are even very lucky. Go ahead and let's look at the recipes. That's how we craft a sword, that's how we craft a hoe, a shovel, a pickaxe, an axe, scissors. Moving on. And a monastery is made if you throw an iron ingot into a pool filled with mana. The next useful thing that we will consider is mana cloth and items made from it. To begin with, we will make a mono thread with you. To do this, you just need to throw ordinary threads into the pool with mana and, accordingly, it will turn into manon if you have enough mana. One of the useful applications of monofilament is the ability to create a web. Well, we will make a mana fabric out of monofilament. Accordingly, you will need 4 units of monofilament and you will get 1 unit of monofilament, and it is needed, respectively, to create other items. And mono fabric, respectively, is needed to create this armor here. Let's take a look at the recipes right away. This is how we craft boots, this is how we craft trousers, this is how we craft a mantle and, accordingly, a hood. This armor has some properties. It does not add a lot of protection to you. Pay attention, there are only 3 units of armor. Wearing leather you will have even more, but when you put on a full set of this armor, you are given a 35% discount on mana costs and the effectiveness of wands is also improved. This armor also restores its strength for mana, if you have it in amber. Also, items made of mono fabrics, monostalia, are well enchanted. With the help of mono fabric, you can create an item like this. It is called the enchantment removal fabric. I think you've guessed what he's doing. Notice what I'm doing now. I have a monosteel cuirass, which is enchanted for explosion resistance, and right now I will put this fabric in the crafting window and, accordingly, we get an ordinary non-enchanted cuirass. But you have used up a little the strength of this very fabric. If you urgently need to clear an item or tool from enchantments, this thing will come in handy. Next, we will consider the following 3 items. A bough from the life of the tree, a crystal bough and a glass pickaxe. We will start with the bough from the life of the tree. That's his recipe. You will need 3 branches of the tree's life and, accordingly, 3 monofilaments. Especially with this bough is that its strength is higher than that of a regular bough and it restores all strength at the expense of mana, if you certainly have it. And now I'm going to fix it. Obeyed. The second bough in turn is a crystal bough, an improved version of the previous one. You will need a tree life branch, 2 dragon stones and, accordingly, 3 mana threads. To shoot this bough, you will need mana and, accordingly, it will consume it in order to restore its strength and generate endless arrows. This bough shoot faster than the bough from the life of the tree. And the next useful item is the mana of the pickaxe. You will need 2 glasses, 1 ingot of monosteel and 2 branches of the tree's life. This pickaxe allows you to mine glass as if you had a silk touch effect. But it has very little strength. And by the way, like these 2 previous bows, if you have a mana source, the strength of this pickaxe will be restored. Next, friends, we will look at very useful things with you. The first item is a circular workbench, and its improved version is an automatic circular workbench. An ordinary circular workbench is made as follows. You will need a pearl of mana, 3 ingots we have arrived, and 1 workbench. So, what does a circular workbench do? As soon as you picked it up, you will be surrounded by such an interesting sphere. To get started, you need to right-click on this workbench that you have and craft something. The last recipe that you make can be recorded on one of these slots. Click the right mouse button and, accordingly, you recorded it, well, when you focused on it. And now every time you right-click on it, it will be created quickly, which is very convenient. In fact, you will be binding crafts. Or you can just get it out and use it as a portable workbench, which is very convenient. To remove a recipe that you have already downloaded, hold down the spike plus the right mouse button and, accordingly, you will free up the occupied crafting slot. The next item is an improved version of the circular workbench. It is called automatically circular workbench. And that's how it's done. The usual circular workbench plus mana diamond. Actually, what is the difference between this workbench and the previous one? Let's craft a conditionally stone button on this workbench. We've crafted it, okay. And now we will ask her to craft in this slot. And as soon as we close our circular workbench now, automatically, it will begin to be continuously created. Please note that right now our stone is being converted into buttons. And this happens automatically, that is, if some unnecessary items are constantly accumulating in your inventory, you can quickly repaint them automatically, even without paying attention to them. Next, we will look at the Rock of the Wild, the Rock of Shelter and the Rock of Destruction of Foliage. And the recipe for a wildlife lesson is like this. You will need the life of a tree in a meadow seed, which I will tell you about a little later. And the Rock of the Wild nature breaks the vegetation around you. It does not require anything for its work, just press the right mouse button and we have just destroyed all the grass nearby, as if we did it with our hand. Next, we have a modification of the Horn of Wildlife. This is the Horn of Destruction of Foliage. Actually, he destroys the foliage. Hold down the right mouse button and we just break the leaves of the nearest trees. And we still have a Horn of Shelter. In fact, it breaks the snow that surrounds you on the same principle as the foliage. We clamp it and the snow was destroyed. Please note that rock breaks only ordinary snow, not blocks of snow, namely snow. Hold down the right mouse button and only the snow was destroyed. And yes, on the basis of these horns, the drums are made, about which I told in the past guide. Next, we will consider with you horse viruses, a necrodermal virus, here is its craft and, accordingly, a latermal virus. With these viruses, you can turn an ordinary horse into a zombie horse.
Why doesn't she turn?
That she's not turning. 1:16:5 This mechanic is not working properly, so I took the summoning eggs. This is how a skeleton horse will look like if you still manage to tie a virus on it. Probably the mechanics are broken, yes. And this is how a zombie horse will look like, and the mechanics also seem to be working incorrectly so far. Can fix it. The next two interesting items are the spiked chakra and the flashing chakra. In fact, these chakras are a throwing weapon that bounces off the surface and sooner or later it will return to you, so it flies back to us. That is, it looks like a boomerang. And the flashing chakra will also set your opponent on fire when attacking. Hop. These things have quite a lot of damage, which will allow you to quickly deal with mobs. The spiked chakra is crafted as follows. You will need 8 vines and 1 ingot of shooting steel, and for the flashing chakra you will need 2 spiked chakras, 1 fairy pollen and 6 fire powders. Next, we will consider with you the seed of growth, the meadow seed, the seed of peace and the ball of the vine. The ball of the vine, respectively, is made with the help of 9 vines. If you throw a ball with a vine, then you automatically create a vine that you can climb. In some cases, this thing can help you out, for example, in such cases. An idea. What? You will also be able to craft a slingshot from the life of a tree, which will allow you to throw a ball of vines at a greater distance, in a straight line, and not in an arc like a projectile. Next, I'll tell you about the seeds of biomes that are changing the world. Let's take it in order. The taiga seed looks like this. It forms a podzol. The mushroom seed, accordingly, will create an area filled with mycelium. A dry seed will create blocks of dry grass instead of the usual one. The golden seed will create blocks of golden grass instead of the usual grass and turf, as it is called. Accordingly, we will have the same thing with an elevated seed. Well, the layer seed will very quickly cover the ordinary earth with grass. Please note that you will not be able to use the seed on the already modified grass. And let's go through their recipes. Here we just need grass, throwing it into the pool will get meadow seed. To make a taiga seed, you will need a dead bush and you will have a taiga seed, mushroom, respectively, mushroom. And you can quickly change meadow seed to other types of seeds by simply adding the appropriate ingredient. I forgot to show you 3 more interesting seeds, maybe they will be useful to you for your house. The first is that you will have a mutated, such a beautiful grass will appear. Second, you will have charged grass and such a bright seed that will create a bright grass. Next, we have a seed of growth, which I already told you about when I was doing a review about flowers. Take it in your hand and right-click and you accordingly create an enchanted soil on which your magical flowers will work more efficiently and will never wither. It is not easy to get this seed, it can be found randomly in the dungeons or kill a second-level guy. Next, I will tell you about the seed of the world or the world seed. In fact, this is a teleport seed that will allow you to teleport to the point of creation of the world. It's not 0 coordinates, but I thought it was a place of death when you show up after a murder if you don't have a bed, but it's not. When using the seed, you will spend money and it works only at a distance of more than 24 blocks from the place where you appeared when it was tied for the first time. Next, we will look at the rods, of which there are a great many. Let's get started. The first wand that we will consider is the Wand of the Lands, and that's how it is actually crafted. What does this rod do? If you have mana in your inventory, then you can pick it up, right-click and you will create a block of land out of nothing, more precisely a trap. This rod can be placed in the totem, in that small wooden statue, which I have already told you about. The next wand is an improved version of the Wand of the Lands, the Wand of the Highlands. And here is his recipe, just the Wand of the Lands it is made. This wand can also create blocks of earth for mana, but it can also do this, create blocks of earth immediately in the air, which is very useful in some situations. But the book says that he consumes more mana for creating blocks in the air. The next rod is the Rod of the Depths. This is the crafting of the depth rod and, accordingly, it can generate cobblestone blocks for mana. Unfortunately, he cannot create them in the air. It can also be placed in a totem. And then he will inherit the Wand of the Seas. I think you guessed what it does and accordingly, it just generates water for mana. And here is his recipe for creation. The next wand is the Wand of Unstable Energy. Here is the recipe for this wand. You will need 2 Guy Spirits, 3 Dragon Stones and 2 branches from the Wood of Dreams, which makes this wand very expensive. And let's attack this enemy mob now. We hold down the right mouse button and right now our MO will be attacked from above with small rackets like this, if you have noticed. Now I'll try to show it again. Oh, these are the little rackets. Next we have the Rod of the Black Mass and this staff will allow you to throw mobs into the air. Quiet, quiet, where did you go? Come here. Using this baton on the players, you will cause them to pulsate on the screen and generally slow them down, they will feel uncomfortable moving around. Next we have the Wand of Bivrist. Accordingly, if you have mana, a ghostly bridge will be created in the direction of the view, or here is a ladder made of very strong blocks in which it will shimmer with color, after some time they will disappear. Here is such a recipe for this wand. You will need 2 fingers, 1 dragon stone and 2 ingots of the element. Also, with this wand and elven glass, you can create Bifrost blocks and with which you can create a fabulous pool of mana. And the next item we have in turn is the Rod of Heaven. That's the kind of craft he has and, accordingly, what does he do? If we hold down the right mouse button, we will be thrown very high and when we land, we will not receive damage, which in some situations can help us out. The next rod is called the Volcanic Core Rod and accordingly this rod will fry some blocks in the world. Hold down the right mouse button and it will turn into a trap. Sand, for example, into glass, cobblestone, he hides a stone, then into a smooth stone, but unfortunately, he does not fry the ores, turning them into ingots. And here is such a recipe for this wand. You will need a rune of fire, 2 fire rods and, accordingly, 2 branches of the tree's life. And the next rod is called the rod of hell, and it will create a zamana, a ring of fire inside which everything will be set on fire, even you. So be careful, friends. And that's how this rod is made. You will need fire powder, a tree life branch and a fire rune. And the next wand is called the terraformer wand. This is a very serious thing. Look at his craft. The rune of spring, the rune of summer, the rune of autumn, the rune of winter, the ingot of terastali, the meadow seed and the wand of lands. What is he doing? By pressing the right mouse button, he consumes mana and begins to level the territory, creating a huge amount of land out of nothing. Be careful when using. This staff does not work at an altitude below sea level. The next item is also called for exchange, and here is its recipe, respectively. How does this wand work? We hover over some block, clamp the spike plus the right mouse button with the wand in our hand, and we sort of remember it. We have its icon with a number. Next, we can now click on some other block and it will be replaced in theory. Click the right mouse button and we have an exchange. These blocks fell out. Blocks of stone were taken from our inventory and put in their place. Actually, this is the principle by which this rod operates. Also, if you have a rod of lands in your inventory, then he can use infinite blocks of land from this rod, or conditionally the rod of depths, doing the same. And the next rod is called the rod of mass binding. It can be very useful in certain situations. For example, when you have a lot of flowers, they need to be quickly tied to some object, for example, to a mana distributor. The next item is called the mass binding rod. Here is his recipe and what he does accordingly. This wand will allow you to quickly retie flowers to some objects. We point at this object, pinch the shift plus the right mouse button with the wand in our hands, and we will have such rays that show that our flowers have already become attached to this distributor. And the next item is called the wand of the magi. Here is such a recipe for this wand. You will need 4 branches of the tree of life and 1 man diamond. This wand will highlight the nearest ores when activated, so that it will be easier for you to find them. I hold down the right mouse button and nothing happens. Oh, everything started happening. Oh, my friends. Just don't get too carried away. On weak computers this rod can crash your game. And it consumes a decent amount of mana. The next interesting item is an extrapolated bucket. Here's his recipe. It's very simple. And actually, what does it do? It will allow you to instantly destroy water and any other liquids. In fact, they will simply disappear, falling into the void. The next useful item is the bottle slime. Here is her recipe and, accordingly, what this item does. This item acts as a compass for slime. Pay attention now to the icon of this object here. The slime inside this jar starts jumping. This means that together under us there is either slime or sleep slugs. Look at the icon again. I flew a little further away from this place and the slime inside this jar stopped moving. A little to the right and it starts moving again. That is, there are slugs in this chunk somewhere. A handy thing to quickly find slime. The next useful item is called a uniform sectarian and, in fact, here is his recipe. You will need 4 bars of mono steel and 3 branches of the tree of life. And actually, what does he do? If you hold down the right mouse button and start looking at yourself for a certain distance, you thereby determine the radius of the circle that this sextant will build. Let me show you now. Here we have built such a small circle. Now I'll hold down the right mouse button again and start looking a little further. And, accordingly, this is the circle we have built now. That is, this sectarian is needed in order to quickly and simplistically build circles. To remove the circle that you have called, hold the spike through the right mouse button with the sectarian in your hand and the circle will disappear. Now I will tell you about the splinter of Laputa Island. A very expensive thing. You will need 3 Guy spirits, 2 prismarine crystals, 1 dragon stone, an air rune and an earth rune. You will also need any floating flower. You can improve this shard if you add the spirit of the traffic police to it. Its radius of action and strength will increase accordingly. We take it in our hands and press the right mouse button. It was supposed to be spent with us, but since I'm in creative, this did not happen. And now all the blocks that were at the bottom will gradually start to be dragged up. In fact, this is how you can steal someone's house or building. But this thing creates a large number of lags, because they spread over a large area. And as soon as you leave this territory, the process will not end. It will continue every time you enter this chang. Therefore, do not dare to use this fragment at home, otherwise the consequences will be terrible. Next, I will tell you about the astrolabe of the creator of the world. You will need 5 ingots in the element, 2 Gai spirits and 1 dreamwood. This item puts blocks. Hover over an empty area and hold down the shift plus the right mouse button and you will change the size of the area to be installed. The maximum is 11 by 11. That is, you will put such a square at a time. Please note that the installed blocks must be in your inventory. We hover over some object and clamp the shift plus the right mouse button and we sort of select it. Now we will put blocks of sand. Now I'm out of the creative and it's like I'm in a real situation looking at blocks of grass. I have 64 of these blocks in my inventory. Accordingly, let's put them. You see, they are rapidly decreasing in number, but they are installed where I set it. This item can also take blocks from some sources, for example, a rod that generates earth and a boulder. And the most interesting thing we have left is a mana emitter and a lens clip. The mana emitter is made as follows. You will need 2 tree lives, dynamite, mono diamond, mana rune and red mana distributor. And, accordingly, a lens clip. It is crafted from the wood of dreams. If you have mana in your inventory, right-click to emit mana, shoot a beam of mana. This bundle of mana does not cause damage. You can also combine the Mana Explorer with some kind of lens to give a mana beam effect. For example, I have this lens damaged, it is even visually displayed. Now, if I shoot the sheep, they will take damage. Oh. To get the lenses, you need to put the emitter in the crafting slots and pick it up accordingly. The lens will appear in its place. You can also connect the study of mana and the lens clip, and you will be able to study the estuaries with the clip installed. Now you will be able to wear not one lens, but several. We combine our emitter with some lens again, and now we just hold down the shift plus the right mouse button and it will sort of reset to 0. But this is not the case. Now we will repeat the same operation again, only with the drilling lens. And, accordingly, now we have several lenses. By holding down the shift and using the right mouse button, we can switch between some lenses that we have in our inventory. Well, inside this buffer. Now I have an entropy lens, that is, I make explosions accordingly. And I pinch the shift plus the right mouse button, switching to the drilling lens and now I can drill blocks. That's where all my friends are. I hope this guide was useful to someone and you got useful information about the crab. And with you Bandurka, thank you for watching me. For now.